Innovation is like oxygen. Whether you realize it or not, you need it to survive. So my name is Robert Neivert, and I am a venture partner at 500 Startups, and I work with a large number of startups. I do a large amount of investing, and I also work with corporate entities to try to work with startups and drive innovation throughout the economy, not only using the startups' knowledge, but using the corporates as well. So let's start off with a basic question here, and I'd like everyone to raise your hand. How many people here are in large companies? 1,000 or more employees? Let's see a hands. Okay. How many people here are involved in startups? Under 25 employees or so? Okay. So we're going to talk about this from both sides. I'm going to talk about how you innovate together, both as the startup and as the large business. So the first thing to understand is that the pace of innovation has increased. Those of you who were old enough to be around 15 or 20 years ago, things were a little bit slower. Industries, large companies could continue to survive with only moderate innovation. They could because technology was over here, that was that industry, yeah, they're fast moving, but the rest, say taxi cabs and mining, it's okay not to innovate. They could manage to survive for a long period of time. But things changed, and the pace of innovation has increased. Just ask the taxi industry. What happened? A company that did not own taxis destroyed them. The thing is, as we move forward, it is no longer possible for the technology companies to exist in one area and everybody else in the other. Every company now needs to innovate because sooner or later they will get crushed by someone who is. It is oxygen. It is no longer optional. You need it to survive. So now, here's the dilemma. For those who raise their hand as a large company, it's hard to innovate. You've got lots of problems with this. You've got to do your reporting structure. You've got to make your quarterly goals. Failure is really not tolerated. How many people here in your minds who work in large companies would be okay walking up to their boss and say, remember that project last quarter? It utterly failed. Oh, that's the tough conversation. That's just it. The companies are designed for efficiency and effectiveness, for taking a product and spreading it globally or massively, but they're also designed for predictability. It is the same thing that makes them successful, that allows them to beat their competitors, prevents them from innovation. Because innovation requires all of that infrastructure designed for efficiency to move, to change, and that's hard. But they have access to capital, and they have huge distribution. They have incredible advantages of knowledge in the system. This advantage, well, let's try pairing that with a startup. A startup has the opposite problem. They can innovate very quickly. It's easy for them to move. In fact, they can risk their whole company on a weekly basis. I myself have been through several startups where I have gambled my entire company on single bets. I have a high, some went under, yes, but some succeeded. But it was faster to innovate because I could take risks. I didn't have to worry about that. My VCs were accepting of this. I didn't write PowerPoint. I didn't even have chairs in my meeting rooms because we could all just stand there. So we could innovate. But the thing what we didn't have was access to mass markets. We didn't have brand recognition. We didn't have massive amounts of capital. So what I'm proposing is an elephant and a mouse dancing together. There is a way to do this. It can be difficult, there are challenges here, but consider if you're a startup, how amazing it would be to have a large corporate backer. Additional funds, additional access, all kinds of initial market, large initial customer. And if you're a large customer, imagine what it would be to have a rapidly innovating partner who could bring new products to market. And you could say to yourself, I'm not going to be the taxi industry. So, how do you do this? I'm going to propose a simple series of steps today to how you can accomplish this. The first one is objective. You have to set a clear objective. If you're the large company, you need to set a clear objective to say what you're trying to accomplish. This should be within the structure of the company. Most companies have these in place. If you're thinking of expanding to Africa, okay, look for expand to Africa. Look for a startup that allows you to get there. But I'm also going to make another recommendation. Do not go to a startup for an incremental advantage. You're wasting your time. You can already do that. Go there when you have failed, when it is a major disruption, when you do not have the skill set. When you are the taxi company and you're looking for a mobile app, that's when you go to the startups. That's when you look for the partner that can innovate. You set a clear objective so that you can measure it against existing infrastructure. On the startup side, for those of you in startups, it's a similar thing. Don't chase anyone who says yes. This will destroy your startup. You have a vision, you have a purpose. Look for partners that are in line with your in line with the objectives you have today. Do not change them just because someone calls you back. It's like dating, really. Be a little pickier. My point is it pays off to have clear objectives and not just to chase money if you're on the startup side. So now you have your objectives. The next step to this is you're going to look for a company, in this case, companies that work with you. On the large company side, you're looking for someone who has the innovation for the area you're looking for. You're not looking to train them, they should have it. You're also looking for them to have exceptional skills and skills you don't have. Here's the thing about startups. They don't have processes in place. It's about the people. Those who know CMM levels, basically it's level 1 and 2. It's all about the people. So you are looking for people you can trust, because that's important, and people that have the skills you don't, and that can achieve the objective you're looking for. On the startup side, you're looking for companies that can work with you without crushing you. If you meet with the company and the first thing they do is hand you an enormous set of requirements, hundreds of pages, this is going to crush you. Think about it. You're not a division. You don't have access to that much resources. You need to be focused. So you're looking for a company, a large company. If you're the startup, you're looking for a large company that can work with you on the scale at which you are, that can communicate with you, and that allows you to continue to build your product and own your IP. Those are important criteria if you're on the startup side. All right, so we've set our objectives. We've picked our company. The next thing we need to do is set an infrastructure in place for how to manage this. On the large company side, we strongly recommend you isolate the group, the division. Give them a separate building. Give them their own process, their own procedures, their own software. Get them off your infrastructure. You're looking to reduce the cost of their infrastructure dramatically so they can work rapidly and quickly with the startup. I cannot tell you how many large companies have the startup directly report to a division, and the first thing the division does is basically ask them to do everything internal as if they were part of the company. All the criteria, all the requirements, all the PowerPoints, all the presentations, all the requirements, all the test plans. Why bother? Why would you possibly, all you did was just acquire a bunch of employees who don't like you. It doesn't work. Isolate, remove all your infrastructure. You're thinking of a small, rapid moving project. I usually tell people to delete PowerPoint off their laptops and to remove all the chairs from the meeting rooms and to delete all the infrastructure software that's on their laptops. You need to think faster, you need to think smaller, you need to think cheaper. Don't sign 3-year leases, sign month-to-month leases. Move this group away from the main. If you're on the startup side, you need to think about how this collaboration, how much resources can you dedicate to it? If you have no other customers but this one, you got to think about it. How much resources can you put here? If you put everything of your company, you're betting your whole company here, you better be sure what you're doing. If it's a small group, isolate them, make sure they can communicate, whether it's Slack channels or whatever it is, so they can function effectively. The second thing I recommend is that you use lean and not waterfall. Many large companies like to do 18-month plans. Month to month, they've got milestones, they've got this delivery and that delivery, and here's your financial plan, and every month you hit your milestone, we give you another chunk of budget. Yeah, that's a good way to kill the project. I won't even bother starting that project. You need to think in terms of validated learning. You have goals every week or 2. These are rapid series of tests to validate who's the customer, how much can you charge, where are you going to sell it to, what's the distribution. You need to validate this very quickly in the project, whatever that project is, and do it with small series of steps. Small steps, quick little successes. This is what lean is all about. I'm not going to teach lean today, but very important on the concept is that you're not aiming for revenue, you're not doing a mass distribution. Many companies will come into a startup and say, we want to take your product and we send it all around the world. Startup can't support that. You don't have the manpower, resources, testing, or knowledge to accomplish that. I strongly recommend you think about small, quick series of tests to validate things in rapid succession before you attempt the larger rollouts. After you have done this and you've validated, you know who the customer is, you know how much they're paying, you know how it's going to work, you know how it's going to scale, and you have failed multiple times along the way because that's normal, now you know how to scale because you know how things are going to work. You have moved from 90% unknown in the beginning of the project to 90% known. This allows larger companies to scale the project. Things are known, you can predict where they're going to go, but most of all to the company, they know it's going to succeed. They already have the product in production. People are already buying it. The amount of risk is reduced dramatically. So the poor guy in the large company who's got to report to his boss now, he's got a much higher confidence level that he can actually achieve those numbers because he has live data. He doesn't have a McKinsey report or a Bain report telling him it's $1 billion of sales. He has actual revenue. And the difference between that is enormous. It's the difference between guessing and knowing. The purpose of the original project of those small steps is to move from guessing to knowing, from 90% unknown to known, to transition from a startup innovation into something that a large company can now scale. Now the startup gains tremendously because the large company can use its resources, its availability of capital and distribution and brand to spread that product and move it much more rapidly than a startup could ever do, because that's what they do well. You've moved it from what the startup does well to what the large company, what the enterprise can do well. In closing, I'm going to close out with just a few last notes called Roll with the Chaos. I have sat in on many of these projects, and it is disconcerting for people because things fail a lot. Things don't work the way you expect. You can't plan. Yes, that's the way it is. Yes, you can do a little bit of planning, but mostly what you're looking for is compliance to your vision or your purpose. You cannot plan effectively because every week you're going to be collecting data. That's the way lean works, and you're going to reevaluate your next week every single week. So if you think you can plan, you can't until the end. Once you've finished all that validated learning and you know how it's going to scale, at that point, you can plan. Accept the chaos, don't fight with it. If you're uncomfortable with it, don't join the project. You need to think of yourself as a surfer. You're not trying to control the chaos. You're trying to ride it and figure out how you can use it to your advantage. Every time you go out and you test something and it fails, you should say, what did I learn from that? What do I know doesn't work? Where do I know not to sell this? Because otherwise, you're forever fighting with a beast that is much bigger than you. So in summary, innovation is oxygen. It used to be optional, now it's not. Whether you realize it or not, you have to have it, whether you're big or small. You can get an elephant to dance with a mouse, you just have to know how. Thank you very much.